Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a really fascinating story, one hidden deep within our genes. Imagine, if you will, a single gene, maybe not single gene, but a genome that tells us incredible stories spanning whole civilizations. From the Central Asian steppes right to the heart of Europe. That's what we're exploring today. The remarkable story behind the Turkish genome. And our mission, really, for this deep dive is to unpack this unique genetic fingerprint of Turkey. It's like a living, breathing mosaic of empires. You've got Ottoman, Byzantine, Persian, Roman, Hellenic, and beyond. We want to uncover the surprising facts and the implications.
It really is quite unique. I mean, some researchers suggest Turkey might be the only nation whose DNA map reads quite like this.
Yeah.
Like a complex mosaic. It reveals a genetic fingerprint that's just, well, it's rich with contradictions, some controversies, definitely some surprises. So yeah, this deep dive will explore what makes this genetic makeup so special and maybe why it's much more complex than just a simple blend.
Okay, so given that incredible overview, where do we even start? How did Turkey become this genetic crossroads?
Well, fundamentally, it boils down to geography. I mean, Turkey's location, straddling two continents, Asia and Europe, and then bordering the Middle East. It didn't just make it a cradle of ancient civilization, which it was, but also what you might call a genetic funnel.
A genetic funnel.
Exactly. Its position meant it was just this major pathway for human migration for, well, thousands and thousands of years. And because of this, findings from big projects like the Genography Project and lots of peer-reviewed genome studies, they show some really interesting numbers. For instance, the modern Turkish genome, it contains about, say, 13 to 16% Central Asian Turkic ancestry.
Okay.
And you can link that pretty directly to the Seljuk and Ottoman periods, the conquests. But then, and this is fascinating, around 32 to 40% of the gene pool is actually Anatolian Neolithic farmer DNA.
Wow.
And it's a huge chunk. And what's really remarkable there is that these are the very people, the descendants of the first farmers who carried agriculture into Europe. They profoundly shaped the genetic landscape of the entire continent.
Huh?
And then the rest, the remaining bits, include traces from the Mediterranean, specifically Greek populations, but also Balkan, Caucasian, Persian, Arab groups, all flowing through Turkey over millennia.
So with this just incredible mix of ancestries, how do people, communities, even researchers, how do they grapple with what Turkish identity means, genetically speaking, I mean?
Well, that's where it gets really contentious. It's a deeply, deeply debated question. You have, on one side, some nationalist perspectives arguing, a more pure Turkic lineage, tracing identity primarily back to those Central Asian nomads. But the genetics, like we've just discussed, tells a very different story. It points to a hybrid origin, something much more complex, definitely not pure in that sense. And historians, they tend to emphasize that the Oghuz Turks who migrated around the 11th century, yes, they were culturally dominant, absolutely, but numerically, they're actually quite small compared to the indigenous Anatolian populations already living there.
Yeah.
There's one study that puts it quite well, noting that the Turkish language and culture Turkified Anatolia far more significantly than Central Asian DNA did.
That's a really interesting distinction.
It is. And you can imagine this has caused quite a bit of political discomfort and scientific pushback, too. You actually have some groups who outright deny the genetic results because they favor these, well, ethno-nationalist narratives.
And it's a debate that's still ongoing, isn't it? You see it in academic journals, definitely online forums, but even, as you said, in the Turkish parliament, which is kind of surprising.
It is.
And just to be clear for everyone listening, we're not taking a stance here. We're simply reporting on what the science and the history seem to reveal about this complexity. Okay, so to help us really visualize this genetic mosaic, maybe cocktail is a better word, can you break down those numbers again? Put some percentages on the different ancestral components for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at the estimated percentages, the rough breakdown goes something like this. Anatolian Neolithic, that's the early farming group, is the biggest chunk, 32 to 40%.
Okay.
Then you have Central Asian Turkic, linked to the migrations, at about 13 to 16%. South European, and that includes Greek and Balkan influences, primarily comes in around 20 to 25%.
Right.
Then Caucasus and Iranic ancestries make up about 10 to 15%. And finally, Middle Eastern and Levantine influences are estimated around 5 to 10%. So you see, it's quite a mix.
It really is. And the visible result of this blend, this, what do you call it, phenotypic diversity.
Yes, phenotypic diversity, the physical traits.
Great. That must be really striking on the ground. You mentioned finding people with blue eyes and fair hair in one village.
Exactly. And then maybe just down the road, you'll find a community where olive skin and dark curly hair are much more common. It's that visible mix reflecting the deep genetic history.
So, okay, beyond tracing ancestry and migration, what does all this mean? Are there other implications?
Oh, definitely. Beyond just understanding human history, the Turkish genome has sparked significant interest in medical genetics. Turkey actually has one of the highest rates of consanguinity that's marriage between relatives in Europe. It's particularly prevalent in some rural areas.
Okay.
And this unfortunately contributes to a higher prevalence of certain rare genetic conditions, specifically autosomal recessive disorders.
Those are the ones where you need a faulty gene from both parents, right?
Exactly. If related individuals marry, there's a higher chance they both carry the same rare recessive gene variant, and their child could inherit two copies, leading to the disorder.
But interestingly, there's a flip side to this. You mentioned it's become a hotspot for discovery.
Yes, that's the fascinating scientific outcome. This unique genetic landscape, partly due to historical population structures and consanguinity, has inadvertently made Turkey a really valuable place for gene mapping and discovery. We're talking, I think the number is over 600 genetic disorders have been identified or better understood thanks to studying unique DNA patterns and clusters within Anatolia.
How does that work exactly?
Well, these somewhat isolated or distinct genetic clusters, sometimes found in specific villages or regions, can concentrate rare gene variants. This makes it easier for scientists to pinpoint the specific gene responsible for a particular disorder. It's almost like a natural experiment.
That makes sense. A sort of genetic magnifying glass.
Precisely. And Turkish scientists are really at the forefront here, collaborating with global genomic networks. They're leveraging this unique data to push forward personalized medicine and even gene therapy research. It's a major contribution.
It sounds like it. And speaking of history's reach, you mentioned the echoes aren't just in history books, they're literally woven into our DNA. That's quite a thought.
It absolutely is. And there's another fascinating side story here related to the Ottoman Empire. Its legacy isn't just cultural or political. It actually lives on in the genes of Turkey's neighbors, too.
Really? How so?
Yeah. Studies looking at populations in the Balkans and parts of the Middle East have found traces of Ottoman Turkish male lineages. You see this particularly in places like Bosnia, Albania, and even parts of Iraq and Syria. It's like a faint genetic echo of centuries of imperial administration, soldiers, intermarriage, and migration associated with the empire.
Wow. History leaving its fingerprint right there in the Y chromosome, potentially.
In many cases, yes. It's another layer to this complex story.
So let's try and bring this all together. After looking at the geography, the history, the genetics, the controversies, what does it all mean? What truly makes the Turkish gene, or genome, so special?
Well, I think it's not just about the DNA sequence itself. It's about what it symbolizes for you, for anyone listening. It represents this incredible genetic intersection of continents, a true crossroads of humanity, like we said. It's also a narrative of migration, constant movement, spanning well over 10,000 years. And maybe most profoundly, it serves as a kind of mirror. It reflects deep history, yes, but also conquest, assimilation, cultural exchange, and even sometimes an identity crisis tied to that complex past.
Yeah, that really resonates. And for me, the bigger picture that emerges is this powerful testament to diversity, to finding unity through complexity, perhaps. And it's just such a profound reminder, isn't it, that identity, well, it just can't be neatly boxed up by blood alone. It's so much more layered than that. So for our final reflection today, let's consider this. Is the Turkish genome pure? Clearly not, based on the science. But is it unique? Absolutely. And maybe that uniqueness isn't some kind of weakness or dilution, but actually proof of resilience, of adaptability, and this endless human connection across time and space.
That's a great way to put it. And perhaps a question for you, the listener, to ponder is, what matters more? The genetic truth, as science reveals it, or the cultural identity people feel and live by? Or maybe, can both exist side by side? Can they actually enrich our understanding of who we are, both individually and collectively?
Definitely something to think about. We encourage you to consider what really stood out to you from this deep dive into the fascinating story of the Turkish genome.